haven't watched my last video on how Donald Trump saved South Africa, stop right now and go watch it. Seriously, because this is part 2. And apparently some people still don't understand just how much Donald J. Trump saved South Africa from the communist demons called the ANC. I thought I made this clear at first, but after reading the comments, I realized I needed to double down for you. The ANC's land expropriation scheme wasn't just a bad idea. It was a full-scale assault on property rights, the economy, and the future of this country. And if it weren't for Donald Trump stepping in, things would have spiraled out of control faster than Eskom collapsing the power grid. So buckle up, grab your biltong, make your coffee, because today we're going deeper. We are exposing the ANC's lies, breaking down Trump's bold move, and proving once and for all that without him, South Africa would have been completely screwed, Bret Hart style in 1997 against Shawn Michaels. Let's start with the ANC, shall we? The self-proclaimed liberators who have been running this country since 1994. But instead of leading us to the promised land, all they've been doing is dragging us down the path of communism. First it was the grants, a little something to keep the masses happy, while the comrades lined their pockets. Now they are coming for your land. Black or white, it doesn't matter. Colored, whatever race you are. Whatever race you are, it doesn't matter. If this isn't a page straight out of the communist playbook, then I don't know what is. Educate me. The ANC has been pushing this land expropriation without compensation nonsense, claiming it's about rectifying historical injustices. But let's call a spade, right? This is nothing more than a power grab. They want to take land from productive farmers and hand it over to cronies who wouldn't know a plow from a pitchfork. And who suffers? The ordinary South African who just wants to put food on the table. Now in steps Elon Musk, our very own export to the world. The man who gave you Tesla, SpaceX, and a glimmer of hope that not all South Africans are content with mediocrity. Elon sees what's happening back home and isn't afraid to call it out. He knows that this land expropriation madness is nothing but a fast track to turning South Africa into another Zimbabwe. And Elon, being the savvy businessman he is, has the ear of none other than Donald Trump. Say what you want about Donald, but he's not one to shy away from calling out bull when he sees it. Now, Elon rings up Trump and says, "Listen, Don, the ANC is about to pull a fast one on my homeland. They are going full communist, they are going full commie, and it's not going to end well." Trump, never one to mince words, decides it's time to step in. Hey, sorry guys, it's raining, hey? So if you hear rain or people shouting outside, please sue me, okay? It's not my fault, okay? It's a rainy day today where I am. Now, Trump announces that the US will cut off all future funding to South Africa until a full investigation into this land expropriation fiasco is completed. He sees the ANC's move for what it really is. He sees the ANC's move for what it really is, a violation of property rights and a slippery slope to economic ruin. And let's be honest, the ANC really does need a reality check. They've been riding the gravy train for too long, and it's about time someone told them the free ride is over. It's rich, isn't it? The ANC bigwigs preaching about equality and redistribution while they sip on imported champagne in their mansions. They talk about giving land to the poor, but we all know where that land is going, to their buddies and their benefactors. The ordinary South African won't see a single hectare because it's the same old story. Promises of a better life for all, while the elite get richer and the poor get poorer. Now let's take a moment to look at the facts. Land expropriation without compensation sounds like a noble idea to some, but in practice, it's a disaster waiting to happen. When you take land from those who know how to farm and give it to those who don't, what do you get? Failing farms, shortages, and an economy in freefall. Just look north of Zimbabwe if you need a case study. Now, before we go any further, I want us to take a step back and break down what communism actually is, because apparently some people still think land expropriation without compensation is some heroic act of justice. Spoiler alert, it's not. It's communism, plain and simple. So what is communism for the younger generation watching this? You see, communism in its basic form is a system where the government controls everything. Everything, your land, your money, your business, even your ability to think freely, if you let them go far enough. That system has ruined countries like Cuba, Venezuela, North Korea, and of course, Zimbabwe. The core idea, no private ownership. Basically, everything belongs to the government, and they promise to redistribute wealth fairly among the people. But in reality, what happens? The rich and powerful in government hoard everything for themselves, while the people they claim to help stay poor, miserable, and oppressed. Sound familiar? Of course it does. That's because the ANC has been following this exact book blueprint for years. They started with free handouts, grants, then slowly tightened their grip on the economy, and now they want to take away your land. So long story short, land expropriation equals to full-blown communism. This land expropriation scheme isn't about justice, it's about control. The ANC wants to control everything, because once they own your land, they own you. Just think about it. If the government decides who gets land and who doesn't, then they sure as hell will decide who gets land and who doesn't. They sure as hell will decide who thrives and who starves. This is how dictators are made. This is how dictatorships are made. Once private ownership is gone, you will depend on the government for survival. And when people depend on the government, they become easier to control as a population. That is why every communist regime starts with land seizures. And every time it leads to nothing but economic collapse, mass poverty, and eventually violence. Let's be real. The ANC doesn't want to give land to the people. They want to give it to who? Themselves. This isn't just about helping struggling farmers or fixing the past. It's about stealing assets, rewarding their comrades, and consolidating power. If this was really about justice, they would have figured out a proper, fair way to redistribute land years ago. Instead, they ignored the issue for decades and are now using radical communism to justify a government land grab. And guess what? The world sees right through it. Investors, economics, and even Donald Trump himself saw what was happening and called it out. He's a businessman. He knows what he sees. Trump knew that this was a slippery slope to disaster, and he sure as hell wasn't going to let it slide. This is why Trump cut US aid to South Africa, because he knew the ANC was trying to pull a fast one, and he wasn't going to let them get away with it. He wasn't going to let the ANC scam South Africa. If he didn't step in, South Africa would be closer to becoming a full-blown communist disaster. Now let's talk about Zimbabwe, because apparently people need a history lesson. Mugabe did the exact same thing in the early 2000s. He took land from the white farmers, gave it to his political allies, not the people. And within a few years, Zimbabwe's economy collapsed. Farms failed. Food shortages skyrocketed. The currency became worthless. People starved, while the government elite lived like kings and queens. And guess what? Zimbabwe had to beg those same farmers to come back years later because the country couldn't produce enough food. Now tell me, why would South Africa repeat the same mistake? Because the ANC doesn't care about its people. They care about power. That's what they're there for. This is why Trump stepped in. He saw the warning signs. He saw the ANC following the communist playbook, and he knew the world couldn't afford another Zimbabwe situation. South Africa doesn't need more government control. South Africa needs more freedom, more entrepreneurship, and more opportunities. If anything, it needs a pro-capitalist country, not some corrupt government hoarding everything for itself. And that's exactly why Trump saved South Africa, by cutting off funding and putting international pressure on Cyril Ramaphosa and his communist goons. And for that, South Africans should be thanking him. Property rights are the bedrock of any free and prosperous society. When the government can take your property without any compensation, you are no longer a citizen, you are a serf. The ANC's move undermines the very foundation of our democracy and sets a dangerous precedent. Today it's land, tomorrow who knows? Your business, your home, your children, your very freedom could be next. It's a strange world we live in when a tech billionaire and a brash American president are the ones standing up for South Africa's future. But here we are. Elon Musk, despite his quirks, sees a bigger picture. He knows the innovation and progress can't thrive in a country where property rights are trampled. And Trump, for all its faults, understands that economic freedom is essential for prosperity. And what does the ANC do in response? They deny, deflect, and play the victim. They accuse Trump and Musk of meddling in South Africa's affairs and business. of not understanding the complexities of our country. But it's not about history, it's about the future. The ANC's policies are leading us down a dark path, and you know it. At the end of the day, it's up to us, the people of South Africa, to stand up against the tyranny. We cannot rely on outsiders to save us. We need to hold our leaders accountable, demand transparency, and protect our rights. The ANC has shown its true colors, and it's time for a change. So there you have it. The ANC's communist agenda has been exposed, Elon Musk and Donald Trump stepping in to give South Africa a lifeline and a call to action for all South Africans to take a stand. It's time to wake up, Mzansi. The future of your country is at stake, and you cannot afford to sit idly by while the ANC drives you off a cliff. Let's take back our country and build the South Africa we all deserve. Let's not forget the ANC's stellar track record when it comes to running things, shall we? Corruption scandals, Kenny Kunene, mismanagement of state-owned enterprises, and a knack for turning gold into garbage. Eskom, SAA, the SAPC, the list goes on and on. They want us to trust them with land redistribution now. That's like handing the keys of a Ferrari to a toddler. The ANC claims that land expropriation without compensation is all about uplifting the poor and giving back to the black people. But we've heard all that before. We've heard that same tune before. Remember the RDP houses that were supposed to provide decent housing for all? How many of those ended up being sold off or occupied by people with connections? The same thing will happen with land, and the rest will be left with scraps. Newsflash ANC, the world is watching. And guess what? Investors aren't exactly lining up to pour money into a country that doesn't respect property rights. Capital flight is real, and with each reckless policy, South Africa becomes less attractive to the global market. But hey, who needs foreign investment, right? Who needs a stable economy? Who needs businesses that create jobs? Who needs a future when you can just rob people in broad daylight, rape the women and children, teach the children nonsense at school and call it justice? Because apparently the ANC thinks we can just print out money and fix all the problems like Zimbabwe did, because that worked oh so well for them, didn't it? You see, the real tragedy here isn't just the ANC killing South Africa's economy. It's what they're doing while acting like they're the good guys, like they're some kind of modern day revolutionaries fighting against an imaginary oppressor that doesn't even exist anymore. Meanwhile, they are sipping in the most expensive restaurants, living in mansions, sending their kids to private schools overseas, while telling you, the actual struggling South African, that land expropriation is going to make your life better. And guess what? It's not. And thank God, or at least someone with a brain, that Elon Musk and Donald Trump are paying attention. Because let's be honest, most South Africans are too busy trying to survive to even realize what's going on around here. The ANC has mastered the art of distraction. Keep the people entertained with nonsense. Keep them fighting among themselves. Bring Chris Brown to South Africa. That way they won't notice that their country is being looted right in front of them. But Elon Musk wasn't fooled. The South African boy saw the writing on the wall, and like a proper Boer-Sean who made it big in America, he said, hold on, I left South Africa to escape this kind of nonsense. I'm not going to let my homeland become the next Venezuela. So he did what any self-respecting billionaire does. He called up his mate Donald Trump, probably while sipping on a Tesla-branded protein shake, and said, my man, you need to come and look into this. And Trump, being Trump, didn't even waste time. He didn't even sit around forming useless committees like the ANC loves to do. He went straight for the neck. He said, oh, so you want to steal land without compensation? That's cute. How about I cut all USA to South Africa? Let's see how you react to that, Cyril. And suddenly, Cyril Pinocchio Ramaphosa and his communist comrades found themselves in a bit of a situation. Because for all their talk about BRICS and being independent from the West, the truth is South Africa needs money. US money to be precise. It needs American trade. It needs investment. And without it, well, we're just another broke African country with leaders who drive Bentleys while the other people starve to death. Of course, the ANC's response was predictable. They played the victim card harder than a bagged actor in a telenovela. They called Trump racist. They accused Musk of not understanding South African history, as if he didn't grow up here. They screamed about colonialism, as if colonialism is responsible for their own corruption and incompetence, as if it was Elon Musk doing the colonialism. And then Cyril, our beloved Cyril Pinocchio tells no lies Ramaphosa, had the audacity to act like nothing was wrong. Like America was cutting funding to our healthcare system, to education, to infrastructure. Like America cutting funding to our very own healthcare system, our education, our infrastructure wasn't a big deal at all. And Cyril, in case you didn't see what I had to say in our previous video, I'm going to ask you this again in this one. What the bloody hell do you think you're doing? This is exactly why South Africa is a laughing stock in the world stage right now. We have a government that acts like it's running a high school debate club instead of a country. And let's get one thing straight. This isn't about race. It never was. The ANC wants you to think so, because that's just how they'll keep you distracted while they keep looting. This is about class. But guess what? The elite in this country, the ANC politicians, their billionaire buddies, their connected families, they are not affected by this nonsense. It's you, the everyday South African, that suffers from this. You, the farmer, black, white, colored, Asian, you who will lose your land to some ANC official's cousin who doesn't know the difference between soil and sand. You, the small business owner, who will see investors flee from South Africa, taking their money with them, leaving you with absolutely nothing. You, the parent who will watch your child's education collapse even further because the government is just too busy playing socialist cosplay to actually fix schools. And while you're suffering, guess where the ANC elites will be? Wrong. They'll be in their 50 million rand houses in Sandton, laughing at you while their own kids study overseas. No more joking around. If South Africa doesn't genuinely wake up now, we are going to lose everything. Elon Musk and Donald Trump didn't have to do what they did. They didn't have to. They could have just ignored the entire thing and gone about their billionaire lives. But they care. And that should tell you something. That says a whole lot more about the ANC than them. And the people who don't care, the ANC. They only care about their power. They only care about control. They only care about keeping you poor and desperate so that you always have to rely on them. It's time to wake up. Because if you don't, you'll be standing in food queues next to Zimbabweans, wondering where it all went wrong.